So Jackie, I'd like to start with you. Can you give us your definition of gender investing, just to set the stage?
Sure, absolutely. And I, in giving this, want to just acknowledge, one, what an honor it is here to be with Dr. Yunus. Two, CGI for the integration of gender throughout this conference is really, really remarkable. And three, there are a set of gender lens investing pioneers in this room. And of course, I can't see any of you, but it is with many, many experts in this room that we really have come to this definition. So here goes. We look at gender investing as intentionally adding gender as a variable to investment decisions in order to increase financial and social returns. So it's intentionally incorporating gender into investment decisions and then driving more social impact and also driving stronger financial returns. So first of all, just to be clear, this is a lens, not a limitation. In the last decade, as I've been working on this, the number of times that I'm in a room and people sort of think as soon as you start talking about gender, you took half the people off the table and you're limiting your investment universe drives me crazy. This is a lens for opportunity, and it crosses all asset classes and it crosses all sectors. So there is nowhere we should not look. That's one. Second, this is smart investing. So, Secretary Clinton and many others for a long time have laid that out. But this is not investing for women, right? This is investing for everyone. And we'll talk later about the role of men in the movement. But that's really important. And then third, this is different. And I sometimes talk about lenses. I am 47, I just got glasses. And my glasses are long overdue, but they're also different than Jan Piercy's glasses here, from Include and all of the amazing work that she's done. So different folks are going to have, different investment vehicles will have a different gender lens. And I think that's really important that as a movement, we keep the tent big, right? So that those who are using a gender lens for women on boards are included, as are those who are using a gender lens for the woman entrepreneur, as those who are using a gender lens for the product or service and how it works for everyone.
Great. Dr. Yunus, can you build off of Jackie's definition and tell us specifically how you see this playing out more in a global context, particularly for women in low-income communities?
When we began our work way back in lending money to poor women, I got into big controversy with the conventional banks. I accused them, I was very nasty to them, accusing them for not lending money to poor people, and then kind of upgraded that accusation by saying that not only they don't lend money to poor people, they don't lend money to women. Across the board, not just to poor women. They said, no, this is not true. I said, it's true. Here is your statistics. In Bangladesh, not even 1% of your borrowers happen to be women. So you justify what it is all about. So they had lots of explanation, the women don't come to us, et cetera, et cetera. I showed how biased the whole system is. If a woman, a rich woman, even a rich woman brings a business proposition to a bank manager, he will always look it through, flip it through, and say, have you discussed it with your husband? And if she says yes, he will say, well, why don't you bring him along so that we can discuss this? I said, has it ever happened in the history of Bangladeshi banking, a man bringing his proposal and man looking through it, have you discussed it with your wife? Why didn't you bring her along so that we can discuss? I said, that's where it went wrong. So when I started, my first principle was half the borrowers in my program must be women. I had no idea what has happened. It was just an arbitrary decision. Half the borrowers must be women. Then me and my students go around talking to women. They say, no, don't give it to me. Give it to my husband. I said, no, we can bring it to you. I said, no, we never touch money. We never had any handling money. We don't know how to handle money. So my students get very frustrated day after day, month after month. They get the same answer. They don't want to join. They don't want to borrow. They said, why don't you just forget about women? I said, well, you can do that very easy. That's no problem. But you always remember when a woman says, I never touched money, I never handled money, I'm afraid of money, remember that this is not her voice. This is the voice of the history which made her. So you have to undo the history. This is a voice coming from the layers of fears of generations. So you cannot just go in there, give you money, give me the money, I'll take it. It doesn't happen that way. So our job is to go back again and again, peel off the fears, layer by layer. Some hoping that someday some women say, maybe I should try. And if she tried, and her neighbors get curious how she did it, and that will encourage others, and this process will begin. It took us 6 years in our history to come to that 50-50 level. But we never gave up. So when you say gender investment, it is a decision. It's not just happens. Even the women saying, I'm no good, still you don't believe her. You have to go deeper inside of her because you cannot change the history of a person, history of a nation overnight. It takes a lot of time. So to me, that's the decision, ultimate decision you take. Just to add to this, 10 years later, after we became a bank and we became well-known, the bankers, in the Bankers Institute, they wanted to have a seminar on the activities of Grameen Bank. All the bankers were in the room, and I'm the one representing my bank, Grameen Bank. So bankers after bankers saying that, Dr. Yunus, you should change the name of your bank. We call it Grameen Bank, Village Bank. The bankers are suggesting you change the name of your bank. The reason? 63% of your borrowers are women, 63%. So you should call it Grameen Women's Bank. I said, well, after I heard it several times, when my chance came to answer the question, I said, well, on this occasion, on this particular question, I would say, yes, I'll be very happy to do that. Change the name of the bank, Grameen Women's Bank, because 63% are women. But before I do that, you have to change the name of your bank. X men's bank, Y men's bank, Z men's bank, because you're 99% men, and you hide it. You don't want to tell it. So that's the way. When you say it is for everybody, it's for men. That's where we go wrong.
Can you continue on this thread and just tell us the story of a woman today and what, it could be a success story, but what her situation is like?
Well, the Grameen Bank not only lend the money, they also, right from the beginning, make sure everybody opens a savings account. Even if it is a penny every week, you must put something in your savings account every week. Never miss that. So that became a culture in Grameen Bank. Today we have 8.5 million borrowers in Grameen Bank, 97% women. They grew up with the habit, putting some money in their savings account. Last year, we lent out over $1.5 billion. And this amount keeps rising, increasing every year. Last year was a quite substantial amount, $1.5 billion. But the interesting thing that happened last year was the total deposit of all the borrowers put together as a balance far exceeded $1.5 billion. So the relationship between the bank and the borrower has changed. So I tell the bank staff, I said, you keep referring to them, these are our borrowers, they are the number of borrowers like this. You always refer to them as borrowers. Now is the time you change that name because they are not borrowers anymore. They are lenders to you. They are lending money to you. You have more of their money than you gave them the money. So that's the change happened in the overall, and you go back person by person. You see she has several times more money in this bank account than the loan she's taking. That's a transformation.
Wonderful. I'm hearing a thread about language that we'll have to revisit as a large group. Jackie, can you comment on the fact that, let's take this back to more of a macro level. There's research now that women-run businesses are successful and they're working. And we know women put that money back into the community, and there are all kinds of reasons in why we should invest in them. But the investments aren't there. Can you talk about what's leading to that situation?
Sure. I mean, I think we can underscore in the room, there's research, right? That this is the data is in, the case has been made. If anybody wants another version of it, an excellent and I think really moves the conversation forward, read the 156-page McKinsey report that came out last week on the role of women in driving the global economy, and actually in a wonderful way picks up what Dr. Yunus has said about decisions and the connection between the social and the economic. In other words, women who can't necessarily control their choices around childbirth are going to make different decisions about how they're going to play as economic actors and all of the other interplays. But yes, the research is in, and whether you want to say women in hedge funds, 50% outperformance for their male counterparts, or I love the First Round. If anybody wants to check out First Round Venture Capital, so every venture capital firm in the Valley should be called Male Venture Capital Firm, right? But First Round did a retrospective of 10 years and found that the women-led ventures 63% more successful than their male counterparts. So we could go on, and we could do a whole panel on the data. The data's in, the investment vehicles are not following as quickly as the data is perpetuating, right? So there aren't as many options out here. And since I'm out always trying to evangelize this, I get some feedback on why. And one is that people say, well, you can't do that. You don't have that data. And I think that is increasingly incorrect, right? So in other words, not only is the data there, but the measurement systems are there. And I would point to a couple of them, right? Women's World Banking has put out great information in terms of evaluating MFIs and microfinance in general in terms of their gender focus. Edge is doing a fabulous job in terms of public companies and thinking about the rating systems there. Root Capital and the Calvert Foundation, who I think are both in the room, have created metrics for their own investments in terms of incorporating gender. So there's all kinds of places. The you can't do this is no longer a restriction. The second thing I get from people is, well, you could do that, Jackie, but you're going to lose money, right? So that this is required to be a concessionary investment. And while I will say there are places for concessionary investments with a gender lens, and we should do that. And we should realize that we subsidize all kinds of investments as a globe, right? Let's just be clear about our subsidy of all kinds of things and decide what we're going to subsidize. But this is also an opportunity for outperformance if you're looking for it. So it does not have to underperform. And the third thing that I get, which is really mystifying to me sometimes, is it doesn't matter, right? So it won't make a difference because at some level, some folks will say, well, this is, investing is a meritocracy. It goes to the best ideas. If you want to take a look at some of the research around implicit bias, you can unpack that very quickly. But the aspect, whether it is in the public markets, so I work for a firm that has an investment strategy known as the Women and Girls Equality Strategy. We invest in U.S. companies, public listed companies, and we look across their entire value chain, from their board to their supply chain. And so we're looking, in the board for diversity, right? We're looking in the supply chain for things like what the Gap is doing, right? If any of you saw the announcement around expanding pace, who are the companies that are thoughtfully engaging women in their factories? Everything in between. And that Women and Girls Equality Strategy has outperformed its benchmark in the last 3 years. So, but more important, it's raised the conversation, right? So it does matter. It matters when you put a gender lens on an incubator on the other side of things, right? So you have public companies, you have startup companies. In the incubator space, when you add a gender lens, you're moving outside of bro culture. and you're including women to this point that Dr. Yunus has brought up of, can a woman see herself as a high-growth entrepreneur? Only if that's continually reinforced by those who are controlling the investment opportunities.
I'm going to ask you to just stay on this point for a minute. And you mentioned a few things that are happening now, like greater data collection, metrics and evaluation, looking across these systems, looking across boards, women in incubators quite consciously. Crystallize a bit more what you think the opportunity holds.
Yeah. So I'm excited about all kinds of opportunities. There's like no shortage of opportunities in this space. Maybe three. One is, I think the opportunities exist in ecosystems. So I think I see Willie Foote, and he talks about pathological collaboration. But this aspect of where you have mainstream investors. I was just on a call for an Oxfam Women in Small Enterprise board that I'm on the advisory board for, and they've got a mainstream bank in Guatemala with a technical assistance provider and Oxfam doing some wraparound social gender training, domestic violence training. It's a lot more complicated than that, but these ecosystems are really important, right? So we can't forget to bring in the mainstream financial institution, and we should call them to task, right? We should ask them to put out their data. But we also can't forget to bring in the deep gender knowledge. So that bringing those together, ecosystems is the one place I'm excited about. Data and transparency, everything we can do about that, and I mentioned a number of those places. And then the third place is action. So my challenge to the room, and here I will channel Sharon Vosmek of Astia, who does a lot of work with high growth women entrepreneurs, and she just basically says, we need to move beyond talk to action. There was recently a gathering of venture capitalists in Washington, D.C., and one of the things that came out of it was they committed to sensitivity training. Okay, and so given what's going on in the space, we need to commit to moving capital. This is the just decide, make it happen. That said, I was just on a call again with investors in the WISE Oxfam Fund, and they want to know what else they can invest in, right? So we do have to investment is about opportunities, and it has to get packaged, right? It does have to get to that product side where people are able to move capital.
Dr. Yunus, tell us a bit about where you're putting your energy today, and what's holds promise for you?
Okay, in a lot of ways. First, I mentioned that 97% borrowers are women. They also own the bank. That part missed out. The owners of the bank, of Grameen Bank, are women, poor women. This is probably the largest women-owned bank anywhere in the world. And the poor women, not just any woman. After this became known as microcredit and it started spreading around, microcredit has become synonymous with the banking with poor women. It's not only banking with the poor anymore, because everybody focuses on wherever the microcredit program goes, they focus on women because they see the enormous amount of impact that you make in the society, in the community, in the family, and so on. And that idea came to New York City. They created Grameen America. And today, New York City, in the Grameen America, they have 8 branches focusing exclusively on women, poor women, very low-income women. And Andrea Young, who is sitting here, she is the CEO of Grameen America. And there are 18 branches all over the United States now, including 8 right in New York and many other cities, Charlotte, North Carolina, Indianapolis, Los Angeles, and so on. 100% women. And today, there are more than 60,000 women are receiving loans from them, very small amount. The startup loan will be somewhere in the range of $1,500. But the beauty of it, the repayment record over the last 6 years has remained extremely high, near 100%, 99.6%. No collateral, no guarantee, nothing. But does the bank show any interest in them? No. They remain what they are. They continue in their space. So people introduce me as a banker to the poor. I said, if you meet the other banker, how would you introduce him or her? Say, he will be a banker. I said, that's wrong. If I'm banker to the poor, he's banker to the rich. See? But you hide that again. So it's not only the women part, again, the men and women and all that kind of thing. So the fact that it works, every single city, not just New York City, started in Jackson Heights, and now spreading all over the city, now spreading in many other cities, show in every single case, they say passed every exam that you want to put, but it's still no interest in that. It lies there. So this is one issue. The one about the investment and what I do, I create something called social business. Business to solve problem rather than make money for yourself. I always point out there are two sides to us, all of us, selfishness and selflessness. Conventional world, conventional economic theory has fueled the selfish part. So we're always busy making money for ourselves. We have not paid any attention to other world, that the selfless part of ourselves. So I try to create a business on the basis of selflessness. In the selfish business, everything is for me and nothing for others. We just reversed it. In selfless business, everything is for others, nothing for me. So we created a lot of those businesses. One is particularly geared towards the problem of the women in Bangladesh. Bangladesh doesn't have much of electricity. 70% of the people have no access to electricity. So what do the women do? Kerosene lamp and fumes from the kerosene lamps, inhale them. One of the major cause of death in Bangladesh is respiratory disease because of the way they live and they cook and all the fume that comes in. So we created a social business called Gramin Shakti or Gramin Energy to bring solar energy in the village. People say, this is a crazy idea, it will never work that way. So we said, we'll give it a try. We don't know whether it will happen or not. So we tried. In the beginning, selling 2 or 3 solar home systems per month was such a challenge. Nobody will believe that this will do anything. But we overcome that. It continued to grow. 18 years later, after we created that company, you started selling more than 1,000 solar home systems per day. So today, there's 1.6 million homes with solar energy. And it all focuses not only the environmental issue, they're replacing the fossil fuel by the renewable energy, but you replace the kerosene inside and save the fume inside the home, and then you take it from there. So we attach the improved cooking stove in that, so that you don't even use the conventional stove that you use as a business. Business, but not for making money for ourselves. Business to solve the problem. So we have created varieties of that. One, just quickly, health. This is also health related in renewable energy that I mentioned. The one very focused on the health of the pregnant woman. This is a joint venture with Intel Corporation as a social business. Intel Corporation will never take any profit out of this business. They can take back the investment money as a social business. This is allowed, but no dividend is allowed. It's a non-dividend company to solve human problems. Any problem can be solved. When you talk about the women, we can solve this women issue by focusing as a social business, because that's where you put the number one on the agenda, not the money part. The moment you make money part, everything gets kind of dissolved, and it kind of gets hazy. So you put the whole issue of gender and put that behind it, engine of a machine called business, and focus on solving this problem. Suddenly this starts solving. What we did with Intel Corporation, they developed, I didn't develop it, they developed it, a very high-powered bracelet. And pregnant women wears it. When the air quality in the house, wherever you live, gets beyond a certain level, it gives you a big alarm. Alarm bell starts ringing. And voice messages come, leave the room, get out, open the door, open the window, because you're at risk for you and your child inside of you. So and it gives a message every month that this is your 6th week of your pregnancy. During this week, you will be going through this kind of symptoms in your body. Don't worry about it. This is normal. But if you have symptoms like this, you press the button, and then we'll get in touch with you. So you bring technology focused on this particular issue. It's not a general thing that you are producing. Because you wanted to solve the problem of pregnancy, because in the Millennium Development Goal, one of the goals is maternal death to be reduced in a level that it is acceptable level at the moment, but it's not acceptable in future. But everybody's trying. Bangladesh has achieved all other Millennium Development Goals mark, but this one is still missing. Infant mortality has been done, but not. So we want to address that. So we want to bring technology and so on. And healthcare for the women is an enormous area, but hardly you see affordable way of doing that.
Jackie, can you build on this and talk about what gender investing or a lack of gender investing and how that impacts products and services designed particularly for women?
Yeah, so I think Dr. Yunus was laying it out really well, which is to say, when you don't have a specific sense of product and services either being for challenges that disproportionately affect women, like maternal health or violence, then you end up with, one, we're not solving all of our challenges, too, but you end up with inferior products. So anybody kind of laugh at the fact that it took Apple an entire year to add a menstrual calendar to its health app? A year? I mean, for those of us who this is a big part of our health, do we think that there's a technology problem here? So that's a humorous one, but anybody want to guess when we started testing female crash test dummies in the driver's seat of cars? In 2011, okay? And we still don't require testing for pregnant crash test dummies, right? And when you are in a car and you're in an accident, the steering wheel becomes a projectile device, and if you're shorter or lighter, you're injured in a different way. So these are the challenges when we don't think from a holistic, gender-inclusive side. You know, we also, I mean, women are 3 times more likely to get lung cancer as non-smokers. And so if you have gender disaggregated trials, animal trials, you're going to learn more, but we don't disaggregate most of that data. There's all kinds of opportunities to solve problems if we actually would think about things from a gendered perspective at the beginning. I think I'd underline the technology support piece, and then the piece that we haven't really talked about that also is very exciting is the different models of investment. So we haven't talked much about pay for success, but there are opportunities in pay for success, whether you're talking about maternal care or girls' education, and whether you're talking about scaling those or innovating in that place. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And then the other thing is crowdfunding, right? So I found it fascinating that women-led tech firms on some of the crowdfunding sites, you're having twice as likelihood that they will get funded. And part of that is because there's some women technologists who have just decided they're going to focus, right? And they're going to fund women who are starting tech ventures through crowdfunding sites. So again, this is a way of harnessing that kind of energy and moving innovation outside of where the traditional channels get blocked by you're not in the right network, you're not in the right room, you didn't go to the right school, you didn't study with the right professor, and all of the other things that can, you know, silo where we do investments in tech.
So at this point, I'm going to turn the conversation over to the audience, but I just want to give you both an opportunity to just share perhaps one last piece of something that's exciting to you in this space that didn't get framed up, or something you just want to put additional emphasis on.
Well, as I said, we designed businesses focused on the problem that you have. If gender is something forgotten, because the world is made in a biased way today. It's entirely biased in a male-biased way. So you cannot just expect somehow it will drift into being even. It will not drift into being even. You have to force it. You have to push it. And there you need a very specific action. So there you need a specific design of each one of them. Not just leave it the way, conventional way, it will somehow bring everything to a conclusion, which will be very happy conclusion. It will not. So you need an intervention to upside down. If you do it this way, you do it the other way. only then it can happen. So the technology and so on, you have institution has to be built for that. For example, we tell the young people in Bangladesh, particularly young people from the Grameen families who have education, we made sure they go to school, gave them education loan and so on, but no jobs. They don't have jobs. So we said, forget about jobs. Job is an obsolete idea. It's coming from old days. This new era doesn't have the idea of job. Why are you looking for job? You tell yourself that we are not job seekers, we are job creators. Behave like a job creator. Think like a job creator. This is not an impossible thing. Getting a job is almost impossible in Bangladesh. But being a job creator is so easy. Your mother has done, taking a loan from Grameen Bank, she became a job creator. She not only takes care of herself in her business, she hired somebody to work with her. If your illiterate mother can do that, what good is your education? If you cannot do even as good as your mother, that you can take care of yourself and take care of others. So we tell it to both boys and girls. Same way, even girls is a job creator. Now what do? We created a social business fund, telling of the young people in the village, everywhere, come up with a business idea. Look at your mother, what she has done. Learn from your mother and follow that. Boy and girl, both. And come up with business ideas. For girls, it's very easy. She sees what the mother is doing. For boys, he has gone to university. Now he has to learn to my illiterate mother. It gets very insulting for him. I said, no, you don't. Your school never taught you what you should be. But your mother has the skill because she has done that. She is on her feet and sent you to school. Remember that. Now the boys and girls are coming. And we keep on investing. He said, just come up with the idea. You don't need the money. We have the money. We invest in you. We become your partner. And you work. You be successful. Once you are successful, return the money we gave you. Because we are a social business. We are not going to make money out of you. You just return the money we gave you and move on. Well, our job is to push you into the orbit. That's all. Launch you into the orbit and go ahead. So you become a job creator. You become entrepreneur. I keep saying that all human beings are entrepreneurs. Men, women, or both. Not just one category of people. Every single human being is an entrepreneur. Pushing them into job direction is a wrong direction. We create a lot of problems by giving them in the wrong direction.
So I could just say amen. And then I would just add, I mean, in terms of the place that I'm excited about is the fact that gender is relevant everywhere. Right? So there's not a specific place where gender is relevant. So whatever it is that you work on, whether you're, thinking about transportation or you're thinking about agriculture or you're focused on housing, gender is going to increase your impact, a gender lens, really understanding how the nature of the world that you live in, it has a gendered bias, and then unleash all sorts of pieces. And the approaches may be a social business, it may be in the public world, public equity or debt world, it may be private. There's all kinds of different ways if you think about that ecosystem, right? So it's back to, and then with the ecosystem and it can be anywhere, the more specific we get and the more realizing that this particular area needs these actors, right? Because of what's happening here, the stronger we're going to be.